Hello everybody, welcome to a quick and dirty overview of how to avoid a run-on sentence. You'll probably notice pretty quickly that there are a lot of memes used in this video because the only thing I love more than correct grammar is memes about correct grammar. So little one to get us started here. Writes a brilliant paragraph, doesn't realize it's a run-on sentence. It's funny because a lot of people misunderstand what a run-on sentence is. They typically think it's just a sentence that's too long. And while it's certainly problematic to write sentences that are too long because it's hard to hold someone's attention for that long, it's really not about length in the end. It has nothing to do with the length of the sentence. There are many grammatically correct, very long sentences out there. I'm guilty of doing that. I'm a very windy sentence writer myself. I have to really go back through and put in some speed bumps here and there, some stop signs. Otherwise, I'll go on forever. But I'm not necessarily incorrect when I do it, nor are you if you write long sentences. It's not about length. It's about, well, I'll tell you what it's about. So what we have here is an example of a run-on sentence that is quite short. I like chips. They are salty. It's only 6 words long, but it is technically a run-on sentence, and here's why. We'll come back to this example in just a second. It's not about length, it's about clauses. And I'll explain this picture of bears in just a second. So clauses, there are different kinds, but the 2 basic types that you need to understand are independent clauses, which means they can stand alone. So as you've learned from our review of fragments and avoiding those in our writing, you know that a sentence needs to meet 3 criteria in order to be considered a legitimate sentence. It has to have a subject, meaning that someone or something must be performing action in a sentence. So if we think of sentences as being like stories, there has to be at least one character, okay? And like a story, there needs to be some kind of action. That someone or something that is our subject needs to be doing something. There needs to be some kind of action taking place. But it also needs to make sense, right? So if I said something like, when I woke up this morning, let me get my little pen here and do it in red. When I woke up this morning. Okay. When I woke up this morning, great handwriting. Yes, it's always this bad, just in case you're wondering. Can't be good at everything, right? So when I woke up this morning, okay, this meets 2 out of 3 of the criteria, right? It's got a subject, I. It's got me doing something, woke up, it's my verb. So we got our subject, we got our verb. 2 out of 3, check. But it doesn't make sense by itself, and you can probably tell right away which word is causing that problem, right? It's the when. So when is known as a subordinating word. I'll switch colors here because it's getting a little... Boop. All right. When is a subordinating word, meaning that anytime you put it in front of an independent clause, it automatically downgrades it to what we call a dependent clause, because now we're expecting more information, right? That word when is turning this, it's subordinating it, right? Hence the name subordinating clause, subordinating word. It downgrades this independent clause to what we call a dependent clause, okay? And dependent clauses cannot stand alone, right? They don't make sense by themselves. They may have a subject and verb, but on their own, they can't do it. So I have a few options for that, right? I could, as you know, we could take out that subordinating word and just say, I woke up this morning. It's not the most exciting story, but it does meet all 3 criteria. It has a subject, it has a verb, it makes sense all by itself. Or we could add more to the story. We could finish the story, right? And tell the rest of the tale. When I woke up this morning, comma, I walked my dog, okay? So now what we've done is we've added an independent clause on there, right, to that dependent clause, and now it's okay. So the reason I got the bears here in the picture is that the analogy I like to use is that independent clauses, I'm going to erase some of this jazzy jazz here, clear things up a little bit. Independent clauses are like mama bears, okay? Mama bears might have a baby bear with them, but they don't have to, right? She's fine all by herself, okay? But dependent clauses are like baby bears. They can't be alone. They have to be with a mama. So that's why having when I woke up this morning by itself wouldn't work. It needs a mama bear to be okay. Or we could upgrade it and make it a mama bear itself. So this is all important to know, because what we've got when we have a run-on sentence is basically we've tried to put two mama bears together, which you can't do, right? Another fun bear meme here. So this essentially is what a run-on sentence is, right? You've got the two bears, they're fighting, and they need to be separated from each other. I'll give you a second to like soak that in, because you're probably trying to read the meme and listen to me. Let me say it again. Basically, a run-on sentence, you put two mama bears together and you haven't separated them, and now they're fighting for our attention, okay? That is a run-on sentence. So if we go back to our original example, I like chips, they are salty, okay? Short, but we've got two mama bears stuck together here, and we've got to separate them, okay? So the first step, okay, before fixing anything, is to figure out where the bear heads meet, right? Where the bears are bumping up against each other. So I'll give you a second to just look and figure that out. I like chips, they're salty. I probably gave it away in my voice there, but you can probably tell, right? It just happens to be kind of right down here in the middle, and it always doesn't happen that way, but it's about where the bears are bumping heads, right? So the first thing is figure out where that's happening, and then we can look into, all right, how are we going to fix it? So you know what periods are for. They're for separating sentences. So if each of these sides, each of these bears could technically stand alone as a sentence, that means that you can use sentence punctuation. You can use a period. And that's, probably a good move. It's definitely the easiest thing to do. Just stick a period in there. Okay? I like chips, period, they're salty. But maybe you don't feel like doing that. Maybe you feel like that's a little too choppy. Okay? Well, what are our other options here? One thing you could do, and this isn't something that I would suggest doing very often. In fact, you could probably go the rest of your life never using one of these and no one would ever notice. You could use a semicolon. So if you've ever wondered what semicolons are for, right? Boop. Looks like that. Looks like a comma with a period on top of it. If you're like, okay, and I've seen them before, they look fancy, I'm afraid to use them incorrectly, so I just won't. Okay, fine. That's fine. You can continue that policy, and like I said, no one will ever notice. What they will notice is if you misuse them. So this is really the only thing that semicolons can be used for, right? They can be used to separate independent clauses, okay? So the rule of thumb basically is just if you could use a period, okay? If you could use a period, you could use a semicolon. But if you can't use a period, you can't use a semicolon, okay? So before you use one, just ask yourself, could I use a period there? And if the answer is no, don't do it. So why would you use one instead of a period? I mean, it's, if you wanted to keep them, if you wanted to have a less slow stop, okay? So if you want the sentence to be read in a way where there isn't quite as long of a pause between the two independent clauses, then a semicolon would be the way to go. But sometimes we need to make a full stop. It's like driving in traffic. Sometimes you need a red light. Sometimes a stop sign isn't enough, okay? Sometimes a speed bump isn't enough. Sometimes you need to stop for a longer period of time, okay? Sentences are the same way. We need a chance to catch up. It can't just go on and on forever, like give us a break, okay? But sometimes semicolons can be a good move. I'll leave that up to you to decide. But like I said, if you opt not to use them, you'll probably be okay. So another option is to use what's known as a fanboy, right? The fanboys, right, these are coordinating conjunctions. Fanboys, right, they're small. Here they are over here. I just popped them up for you. These are the only ones we have, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay, fanboys. These are what are known as coordinating conjunctions. So to coordinate something means to manage two things at the same time. So you want to think about your fanboys as being bear tamers. Okay? They are small words, but they are mighty words. They can effectively separate the bears from each other. And of course, they don't all mean the same thing. There's a big difference between saying, I like chips and they are salty versus I like chips, but they are salty, right? In one of those scenarios, you're saying, I like them in spite of the fact that they're salty. Of course, we could be very dramatic about it and say, I like chips, yet they are so salty. Or Shakespearean, I like chips, for they are salty. Any of those would work, okay? Notice I'm putting a comma in front of the fanboy. We only do this, by the way, if what comes after that fanboy is an independent clause and could stand alone. All right, you don't need to put a comma in front of every and that you ever write. All right, we only do that for lists and for what we call the Oxford comma and for separating independent clauses. Okay, a little bonus for you there. Or, and hopefully you remember this from earlier when we talked about dependent clauses, you could downgrade one of the bears to a baby bear. Yeah, so you could put a word in there in between that downgrades one of the bears to a baby bear. So I was thinking something like because. So because is one of those subordinating words. If we got rid of I like chips and just had because they are salty, right, that would be a fragment. That would be a fragment. And we don't want that, okay? But you can have mama and baby together. Like, you just can't have two mamas together. But you can have mama and baby together, like, all the time. They love being together. I like chips because they're salty. Or you could flip it over. Because they are salty, I like chips. You've got options. So lots of ways to fix. Okay, but one thing we don't want to do is try to use a comma. Okay, and this, if you've ever been accused of comma splicing in your writing, this is what you did. Okay, one thing that is not strong enough as a punctuation point is to just try to separate the independent clauses with a comma. Okay, that's a comma splice. That's like trying to separate mama bears with tissue paper. It's just not strong enough to do the job. Okay, so this is comma splicing. We need something stronger, like a period or a semicolon, or if you want to put a fanboy after that comma, you know, all that would work. But on its own, a comma is not strong enough. And I love this one here, this meme, because a lot of students do think that way. They're like, okay, well, I'll just take out the commas, and then I don't have any comma splices. But I mean, hopefully you're already picking up on the fact that, like, that doesn't fix anything, because now you're just back to the same problem. Now you're back to a run-on. So that won't do the job either. So, but you know now. You know what you've got options, lots of ways to fix. You can use a period, you can use a semicolon, you can use a fanboy, or you can downgrade one of them to a baby bear. But step one is just identifying where those bear heads are bumping up against each other and then separating them appropriately. So, thanks very much for watching. I hope this clarified some things, and that you have a great day and that you go forth and live grammatically. Take care. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Bye.